Good afternoon. I wanted to just jump on today really quickly and share a bit of an insight it's a bit of a revelation actually that I've had today. And on the surface of it, might sound really obvious, but this seems to be something for me that has just connected a lot of dots, made a lot of my past choices and things make sense. And, this is on the back of me having spent the last 6 months really turning inwards. The last 6 months for me have been 6 months full of very intense change, endings, transformation, pivots. When it comes to relationships, where I live, I've moved house, I've changed the direction of my business, I've retrained in an area of my skill and passion. I've ended some significant professional relationships, started and met a few really significant connections, and ended a significant personal relationship as well. So there's been a lot, it's all been very considered. I've applied a lot of discernment when it comes to these changes, but it has given me space and opportunity to really kind of go inwards and figure out what the not the remnants of my healings, because I don't think we're ever fully healed. I think or maybe we are, but I think it's definitely a journey. But there's been some remnants for me, or there's still been some things for me that have sort of stuck with me. And one of them in particular is around the responsibility that I seem to assume when it comes to other people's emotions, which is really interesting because actually a lot of the work I've done over the last 5 or 6 years to regain my power and my sort of control in my ability to protect myself and make decisions that are right for me has been the need to take accountability for my own emotions, right? My own thoughts, which lead to emotions and then actions. And in the past, I have given that authority to other people. I've allowed other people to make me feel a certain way, which of course we know you can't, in reality, you can't do, but I have given that power to other people. And when I've really dug deep, and I've stopped doing that now, but I have felt that there are still some situations where I felt very uncomfortable with expressing how I feel. And what I've realised is beneath that giving away of authority to other people is actually the the responsibility that I've completely lost words there. That's the menopause hitting me. I've completely given away, or I've completely assumed responsibility of other people's emotions, how they feel, how what I might do might make them feel. And I've realised that, whatever we apply to ourselves, we have to apply to everyone else. We really truly do believe those things, right? We have to trust that other people are responsible for themselves. And it's difficult because when you're in that situation where you are giving away that authority, you are likely attracting people who are going to use that not in a good way. So you are used to people not taking accountability for themselves, blaming you, right? And so I found myself in a situation recently where I wasn't feeling 100% comfortable with a couple of things within a situation. And I knew that I wasn't gonna just say yes to them, and realised that actually in the past it's this need for wanting to make people happy and people please has led me into making decisions that I would not have made otherwise, and say yes to things and not say no to things that I didn't want to do or didn't feel sure about, and has led me down some dark paths, honestly. So this situation in particular, it was nothing extreme. It was just a little bit of uncomfortability around certain things. And what I realized is in the healing process, what I've done is created these boundaries and these abilities to really connect with my intuition and for my body to really feel connected to situations. So I can feel in my body and in my intuition when things aren't aligned with who I am, when things are not a match to my vibrational frequency. And that doesn't mean to say that the other person's wrong, it just means that it's not comfortable for me. And although I knew that I wasn't going to say yes to these things and I needed to be vocal about my uncomfortability in a kind way, I felt really difficult. It felt really difficult, and it felt like I I was triggering an old sort of pattern, but it was very visible. So I was able to really notice that, hang on a minute, there's something going on here, and sort of pick it apart. And actually, it's really quite obvious. Um, and what that was I was taking on responsibility. I was hesitant to share how I felt because I was worried about how it would make that person feel. And that is not my responsibility. I am not responsible for other people's thoughts, feelings, or actions. What I am responsible for is sharing my thoughts and feelings in a kind way and an honest way. And with that honesty and kindness, I have to trust that that person is healed enough as well and is on the right vibrational frequency to be able to accept those with grace. Now, if they don't, that's not my responsibility, and I can't worry about that. What that gives me is more data. It gives me more information and more autonomy to make further decisions about that situation or that person. And that's really what I wanted to share today, because it feels like such a significant insight. And I think it's quite common for women in general to want to people please, or there be an expectation on women more so than men to please in certain social situations and take on certain roles, she roles, I've heard them be called recently. But I think particularly in neurodivergent women, where subconsciously and directly and indirectly, we spend much of our lives feeling like we're not doing the right thing, we're not fitting in, we're not the same as everyone else. And I think that often leads to this desire to mask and to pretend and to try and fit in. Well, if that person's doing that, then I need to do that. That's the way it should be done. If that's expected of me, then it must be right. They must be right. How I feel doesn't look the same as everyone else, so I'm wrong. And I think it's a really, really dangerous place to be in, because you can, particularly if your neurodivergence isn't diagnosed or recognized, which for me it wasn't until later in life. So I've gone through my entire life not even knowing, which essentially makes you vulnerable. And I think you then, when you're vulnerable, do tend to attract people who can sense that vulnerability. And, we know it's very common for neurodivergent women to attract, narcissistic type partners. So I just wanted to share that today, in that I've spent so much time focusing on me, which is right, we should. But also sometimes what I forget is the things that I expect of myself, I have to apply to others. And that has been a really big revelation for me today.